Hi everyone, Jessica here from Paper Ink Stamp and welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be creating quite a basic colourful card, and I've got two main products I'm going to be using. We've got the Hunkydory Be Happy Sentiments die, and then we do have the Simon Says Stamp Centre Cut Heart Background Stamp. So to begin with, we're going to create a really basic colour blended background. So you can see I'm using three colours of Distress Oxide. I've got Fossilised Amber, Picked Raspberry and Peacock Feathers. So the cardstock I've got, this is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I am then just going to cut this down later on. But you can see that I'm starting with that peacock's feather on the left hand side. Then I'm going in with that fossilised amber on the right, and then I'm going to use that picked raspberry in the middle. So I've got my two outside colours just to make sure that I had enough space to get then my fossilised amber. And I'm just using my blending brushes for this, and then what I'm going to do, because I just have obviously one brush per colour, I'm then just going to wipe these brushes onto my microfiber mat when I'm finished, and that will just clear off any ink. And I find that these brushes are actually the best ones that I have purchased. I don't know if they're more proper kind of brushes rather than the makeup brushes that I've bought previously, but they seem to be working really well. And you can see there then we've got our blended background. The blend doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to add some splatter, and then we're going to be white heat embossing our background on top of this panel. I really love these three colours together because it does create almost like a rainbow. You do get those colours in between as well, and it's just a really bright and sort of a different kind of colour combination if you do want to have that kind of rainbow style. So here you can see I'm just mixing up some Cosmic Shimmer Pearlescent mica powder. We're going to do some splatters onto this background again just to make it more interesting. And if you're not entirely happy with your blended background, you could just add splatter, and that will then sort of help take the eye away from the blending because it's all just going to give it a different kind of look. So you can see I'm using quite a big brush here. So to begin with, the splatters are very big, which I like that. I'm happy with that, but I wanted to get some more sort of smaller splatters in here as well. So you can see that I'm just flicking it with my finger. You could use an acrylic block. I usually do that, but yeah, I'm just using my finger here. So I did let this dry. I did use my heat tool as well just to make sure that this did dry, but because I want to heat emboss across the whole of this background, I'm going to really liberally use my anti-static powder bag. So you can see that I'm really laying this on because I don't want the embossing powder to stick anywhere that it shouldn't outside of that design. So I'm just making sure that my whole background is dry. It's not going to stick anywhere. So like I said, really putting this powder on this background. So I'm going to brush off any of the excess powder from the actual panel itself, and then I'm going to test this with some embossing powder. So I'm just going to sprinkle it over the background and make sure there aren't any areas where it is going to stick to. There was just a very small areas where it did, so I went and repeated the process. So I used the anti-static powder bag again and brushed off the excess. I just really want to make sure that I get a really nice sort of clean background design. And again, so just using my brush, and then I'm used a little bit of that powder that was on the glass mat, but again, I just wanted to make sure, so I did go back in with my anti-static powder bag. So once I'm happy that it's not going to stick anywhere I don't want it to, I'm going to pop then this Centre Cut Heart background stamp. So this, that love heart in the middle, that actually detaches. You do see later on that I do stamp just the love heart on the inside of my card, but for now I'm keeping it attached. I've popped that into my stamping platform, and to make sure that I get it the design straight and get it where I want it to go, I'm actually going to pop my paper on top of the stamp for the moment. You can see I'm lining it up here. I am going to add a piece of adhesive to the back of this, just my dotty pen, just to keep that cardstock in place, because obviously I can't use my magnets from my stamping platform. Then I'm going to close this so it's going to be upside down. I can turn it back over, and then when I open it up, my paper then is on the right side, and we can go ahead and start using our embossing ink to stamp this image onto our background. So I'm using my bigger pad rather than the Versamark purely because of the size. So I am stamping this up. I don't need to stamp the whole of this image up, but obviously just enough to cover this image. I do ink up this stamp and stamp it a few times. I want to make sure I get a really crisp impression, and I want to make sure that that embossing powder is going to stick to the whole of the image. So you can see here pouring on the embossing powder, and you'll be able to see the design in a second, and just how beautiful that looks with that white embossed on top of that really colourful background. And again, like I said, if your blend isn't perfect, it really doesn't matter because you're not really going to notice it. I liked the background as it was anyway, but I think the colours go together so much better, and I think it just looks so much better with this stamped design on top. So you can see that I'm just knocking off any excess. I'm catching that on the piece of paper I've got underneath, and I can just funnel that back into my pot. This did take a little while to heat emboss. I did make sure that my heat gun was nice and warm before I started using it, just so it doesn't warp the cardstock too much. But you do need a little bit of patience when you are heat embossing sort of bigger backgrounds. But I was really happy this sort of came out really how I wanted it to. By taking the time to make sure that you're using your anti-static powder bag, to make sure the embossing powder won't stick anywhere else, to make sure that you've stamped it to get a really great coverage. It makes all the difference sort of doing those steps and doing it well, because then your final result is just so much better. So now we're going to create a sentiment. That's our background done. So like I said earlier, we're using the Hunkydory Be Happy sentiment die. So this has got happy, and that's really, really big. It's got then a shadow die as well for that. And then it has lots of smaller word dies in there as well, along with a banner, and they do fit perfectly on the banner. So I did die cut the top happy die. This was from some Craft Perfect Ocean Blue cardstock, and I think this goes really nicely with that peacock's feather. I did with the shadow die, I die cut that from some vellum. I do end up changing this and cutting it from some mustard yellow cardstock because it didn't stand out enough from the background, but that is a little bit later. You will see that. For the birthday die, I cut this from some fuchsia pink, and again then the banner I cut from some vellum as well. So this won't stand out too much, but it will kind of have a nice definition between the background and then the sentiment itself, obviously because it is still a really beautiful pink colour on top of that background. If you didn't have that piece of vellum, or if you didn't have that backing, it would kind of get lost on it. So I'm just using my dotted tape pen by Crafter's Companion. This is a really great tape pen because it's not a solid line, so you won't see the adhesive in between the letters. You just got to be careful not to kind of rip your words, but it works super well for attaching die cuts. So now we've got all of our elements, we're going to go ahead and construct our card. So the size of the finished card is going to be 5.5 by 4.25. So this is a US A2 sized card. It's going to be landscape, but it is still going to be top folder. So I've cut a piece of mustard yellow cardstock by Craft Perfect, and I'm going to be using this as my mat and layer. So again, I'm just using my tape runner to attach then this background to the card base. Then for the coloured panel, I'm going to use some of that Simon Says Stamp Big Mama foam tape. Again, really beautiful amount of dimension. And then we're going to pop that down, and then we can go ahead and start putting our words down. This was the point then where I kind of realised that I wanted to have a different colour and not that vellum behind that happy, because you can see it kind of just melts into the background a little bit. So again, I cut then that shadow die from that mustard yellow, and it just made it stand out a little bit more. Of course, you could use different colours or darker colours that will stand out from the background as well, but I really wanted to keep the theme of having this sort of teal with the really fuchsia pink, and then that yellow as well. I did pop some nice big foam pads onto the back of this. You could stack this with multiple die cuts, but I just used some foam tape because I really again wanted it to stand out, and it gives a really nice shadow behind the die cut, and that just kind of helps again make it stand out from the background. I'm using my T-square ruler just to make sure that I get this applied nice and straight. And I think then having that yellow behind it does just, like I said, make it stand out nicely from that background. With our little birthday banner, I have just trimmed this down. Again, I'm going to use my T-square ruler, and I've got then just my die pick here just to help hold it and move it around so I can get it in place. And I use that dotty tape pen again just to add some adhesive to the back of this birthday banner. I find that that is, for me, the best adhesive because you don't see it come through. You have to be really careful with vellum. But again, it's really great for any really intricate dies that you've got because you just don't see that adhesive in between. So once that's down, that's the front of the card constructed. I do end up off camera adding some Nouveau crystal drops. I use the clear drops, which is the Morning Dew, and also then that Neptune turquoise as well, just to add a little bit of embellishment. I do then, like I said, stamp that center heart on the inside of the card. So when you are decorating the inside of your card, the best thing to do is to decorate it before you start putting your card together, because the front panel has got so much dimension on it. Of course, it doesn't sit in the stamping platform, so it's always a good idea to kind of do that beforehand. But I'm popping it into my stamping platform just to have it in place, but I am then using an acrylic block to stamp that, and I'm stamping this in that peacock's feathers as well, just so it matches with the front of the card. So that'll be our card finished for today. So you can see that I've paired this with a handmade envelope using some fuchsia pink cardstock, and I have stamped that background stamp onto the flap of the envelope as well using some picked raspberry ink. So it just matches the envelope with the card, and then we've got a bit of decoration on the inside of the card as well. You can also see then those Nouveau drops that I've added, just add another bit of colour and then just add a little bit of embellishment. So if you did like this card, please consider giving this video a thumbs up. It is greatly appreciated. I will pop some links to the products that I've used in this video in the description box down below. If you aren't a current subscriber to my channel, please consider hitting that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss out on any future videos. On screen now you'll find a couple of other videos that I think you might be interested in if you want to check those out. But for now, thanks very much for watching and happy crafting.